So today, as you all would know, that we are here to start or begin the session or begin this session with how effective classroom communication can be carried on, both in an in-person or physical setting and a virtual setting. So I will develop this session with a little bit of sharing of information and sharing of principles and tenets of communication and how we need to modify them and transform them to fit into a classroom communication scenario, and then further transform them to be applicable, relevant, and effective in an online setting. There will be a few activities that we will take out during and we will participate in during the session. So I will request all of you to participate, support me so that I can elucidate the learning better. Before I move any further, I'd like to ask you, do you want me to continue the session only in English, or would you prefer that I deliver the session in a mixture of both the languages, English and Hindi? Please let me know your preferences while I begin to. Okay, thank you, Dr. Aruna. You've said English alone. If there's anybody who feels otherwise, please let me know. I'm sharing my screen and I will begin with sharing my PowerPoint presentation.
Any language, ma'am.
So I will stick to English only because I feel everybody is comfortable with that. And just in case there's something that perhaps needs further clarification, then I might switch over to Hindi. All right. I hope my PPT is visible now because for me, I can only see my screen and my PowerPoint slide. So I will request all of you, any one of you can unmute and let me know.
Visible, ma'am, visible.
Thank you so much. And I might not get your name because your names are again on the screen where the Google Meet participant styles layout is visible. So please pardon me if I do not address you by your name. This was an activity which I would have loved to carry out and share with you had we met in a physical setting, because this is easily done and accomplished there, and also with a little bit more numbers than just 4 or 5 of us. So I will skip that, but do not worry, there are many more other activities that I've incorporated into this session. But before I move further, like I shared earlier, I want to share with all of you what communication is. So, how do we define communication? Let's ponder over the word communication itself. It finds its origin in the Greek word communis, that means connection, that means community, from which has also come the word community. So, communication, community are words that are intertwined, and their intentions and implications are also intertwined. Communication is a way in which we connect with the others. So, how is that done? Let me share with you this model here, and it is very much similar to the setting that we have presently, in which all of you esteemed participants are attendees of a session, and wherein I have the privilege presently to address all of you. So perhaps we can say that I am the source standing at the podium and communicating my message via a channel to my receivers or recipient. So there is movement from the source to the receivers. And then if you'll see, ladies and gentlemen, at the bottom, there is another arrow that moves from the receivers to the source. So this implies that communication is a cyclical process. It is a two-way street. So does not exist, or we cannot define an act of speaking, writing as communication when only the source has employed a channel and passed across the message to the receivers. Communication will only be completed when there is feedback as well, which is received from the recipients to the source. So it implies in a standard stimulant response model, or in the basic model of communication, both the source and the recipients interchange their roles and become the recipients and source as well. It just matters who is communicating. The differentiation only matters in the case of who's communicating first and for how long either of the two entities is speaking or communicating. But let's ponder over this image further and let's see, or even or try to apply the model to our present scenario. As I just shared with you, that this is the slide in which I would have undertaken an activity with all of you. Find your pair, right? And had we met in a physical setting. Now, although I had in my mind what I am going to share with you, that is effective classroom communication, but how I'm going to share with you is determined by you, by the recipients. Furthermore, how I am going to encode this message, how I am going to encode this what is going to be determined again by my recipients. For example, in the beginning of the session, I asked, would you want me to continue to speak only in English or perhaps a mixture of Hindi and English? And then I received a response from most of you saying that you all are comfortable, that you're comfortable with English. So I said, all right, then I will continue to speak in English. So, what has to be sent across perhaps is what I can think of or what I can determine on my own. But how it has to be sent across, how it has to be encoded, all is determined by my recipients. Furthermore, whatever I communicate to you, employing whatever channel that is convenient for my recipients, and how I send the message across dependent upon the requirement of my recipients. Finally, how is it decoded? How is it understood and assimilated by the recipients is again something which is very intrinsic and isolated with my recipients, with the receivers. So again, that power or that control is also exercised by my recipients. And then finally, the feedback that the recipient sent to the source is also controlled by, managed by, initiated by, and completely influenced by the recipients. So, ladies and gentlemen, it implies that, contrary to popular belief or opinion, that the person who's speaking first, or in fact, for that matter, the person who's speaking or addressing the source, commands and exerts more influence in a communication process is totally the falsehood. It is much farther from the reality than as we would even like to assume, even after this assumption has been proven wrong for us. The source can perhaps just have a minor control over what is it that has to be sent across. But in this present setting, again, what the topic of the session has also been determined by the participants. So, in this manner, I can only speak and transfer my information, knowledge, and whatever experience that I may have collected during my life and during various other roles that I have performed during the course of my life through this session. So essentially, I have a very little control or very little influence over the entire session. It is my recipients, it is all of you who determine whether the session is effective, whether the session is successful, whether the session is relevant. Yet it does not mean that I give up all control. It means that since everything that is under my control is so minute in nature, I should definitely strive towards making the best out of this. I should definitely present my engagement, manage and perform my engagement in such a manner that it is to the best of my abilities. In that in that circumstance, I will not definitely not be doing something that is going to let the session flow out of my hand, which is in any case not under my control or influence. The same is the situation in a classroom setting, wherein the students exert immense influence and immense immense value and essence to the outcome and the delivery of the session. The teacher might feel that the teacher definitely feels that what they have to communicate to the students is of utmost importance and significance. But do the students identify and recognize and value that fact? Perhaps not, because they are otherwise distracted, or the channel that the speaker might have chosen, the teacher might have chosen, does not appeal to them. The message is encoded in a manner that is not coming across in the same wavelength as that of the students. Sometimes the students are not ready to put in the effort, which is called noise. Not just noise of how we traditionally understand the word noise, but noise as external factors or internal factors adversely affecting the communication model. Perhaps the decoding by the students is faulty and they do not understand the session or the lesson. So, in this way, the responsibility of the teacher becomes all the more pronounced when effective classroom communication has to happen. And to place this entire scenario in a virtual setup where plenty things can go wrong, wherein the involvement or the engagement of the students or the recipients diminishes significantly, because non-verbal communication, or most of the aspects of non-verbal communication, are not engaged or involved or available to the teacher. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, 93% of our communication is non-verbal in nature. So, the problems or challenges in effective classroom communication magnify exponentially when the model is set in a virtual classroom. So, what is it that can come to the succor of the teacher and support the teacher in delivering an effective classroom communication? It is the feedback. So, wherein we were getting gestural clues, gestural expressions, or non-verbal expressions and non-verbal messages while in a live classroom in a physical setting. These have been curtailed because the videos are off. For example, now also when I logged into the session, only Amandeep ma'am switched on her video when she was speaking to me. My video was on, but everybody else's video is turned off. I do not cannot associate the names with the faces. Had we set up a session in a physical environment, then an introduction would have definitely become the first thing, because I would have wanted to know all of you, because I was able to see all of you. So this is how things magnify and get more difficult in a virtual setting. So, the teacher should rely upon feedback. If we had feedback which was gestural in nature in a physical setting, that feedback is curtailed completely in a non physical or a virtual setting, because gestures are visible, which we cannot see when the screen is turned off. So, what this teacher needs to do is engage or provide opportunities or create instances within the classroom session, within the session plan, wherein feedback is sought from the students, wherein they are encouraged, requested, and asked and instructed to turn on their videos and speak, perhaps something related to what has been shared immediately in the session, or something that was shared earlier. Perhaps an activity is happening. So, feedback is your biggest support when it comes to effective classroom communication in a virtual setting. We feel that when we invite students to speak, they might distract the others, they might digress from the contents of the session, and they might take the discussion altogether in a different direction. But that is the only way to engage them, by allowing them to contribute and feel that they are a significant part of this classroom session. I'd like to share here with you a tenet or principle that we follow in our corporate settings. So, meetings, as of meetings, um, as themselves have been discouraged and disallowed, or perhaps disproved or disapproved in the corporate setting, because everyone feels, or most of the people feel, that they're a waste of time, because again people do not engage, they do not contribute, they just the yes sayers just come to listen, the naysayers would not want to say anything, or perhaps just criticize unnecessarily, and the meeting does not head towards a conclusive outcome. But there has been a very famous um, coach, executive coach, who was earlier a basketball coach, who started working with startups of the Silicon Valley, and he's coached Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Satya Nadella, and many other founders. Michael, I'm forgetting his surname, but his first name is Michael. I think Michael Condelli, and he has said that meetings will be successful when we engage our participants. So usually Monday meetings, which are most important planning week meetings of the week, he said, should begin with trip reports, and it has been adopted with successful outcomes by most of the corporate sector setups. Now, what are trip reports? That over the weekend, that the chair, the person, the boss who has convened the meeting should begin by asking each of his or her team members what they did on the weekend. Did someone go out? Share some information about going out. Did someone go to a basketball or a match or a game that wherein they were playing with their local club or community or group of friends? Did someone just stay back at home? Did someone catch up on their household chores, whatever it is? And Michael would turn up with Google Maps, marking his route, showing it on the projector, talking about the cities that he visited on a bicycle, on a motorbike, with his wife in the car, and share a little bit and make a proper route of it on Google Maps and talk about it at length. Now, what did this do was, it engaged the participants in telling about things that they were comfortable in talking about. It also helped in lowering their guards about talking about work, stressful situations, difficult projects. Once these guards were lowered, they were much more open to listening to the boss. They felt that their boss uh, is sensitive and inclusive in his or her approach, and these participants felt much more encouraged and motivated to share their own observations, to share their own inputs in the project. And the participation within the meeting, then the participation and engagement with the points of action after the meeting also enhanced. So these are called trip reports. You can just look them up as trip reports, corporate sector, or trip reports, Michael Connelly. You'll find what I'm talking about registered there on Google, wherein most of the people have vouched for it. So if you intend to communicate to the students by just coming and addressing, standing at a podium or sitting at your chair and just beginning your address and discourse without involving them, and keeping this tempo of involvement at least at the same level, if not higher, through constant feedback and interaction, then it's not going to work. So that means our lesson plan also should incorporate these in windows or these instances where our students would be speaking. We'll be talking about our lesson plans tomorrow, but I hope I have been able to bring about what the communication model is and how feedback is our ally. I'll share with you two definitions by popular online dictionaries. And here, the first one we can see is businessdictionary.com, that says that two-way process of reaching mutual understanding. So it has to be two-way. If it is communication, it has to be two-way. So even now, for example, now I have spoken for so long without having any kind of inputs or engagement from all of you. I know that soon I should come up with a break wherein I should engage all of you, so that it becomes quickly becomes a two-way process, because there's a very fine line between the speaker speaking for most of the time and then speaker going on a monologue without engaging with the participants at all. So one must reach mutual understanding. So there should be understanding reached by both the parties involved, the source and the receivers, in which participants not only exchange. So again, there is an exchange, encode and decode, information, news, ideas, and feelings. So it is not only information, news, knowledge, ideas, but there's also exchange of feelings. These feelings could be that I could not understand, this is very difficult to understand, I'm too tired to engage with this difficult topic right now, or these sessions have become boring and monotonous. So these are feelings, right, which have been communicated through messages, which we need to accept. If we disregard, if we do not pay heed to these feelings or this exchange, then that means whatever we are trying to offer in exchange will also be dismissed and not accepted. So, in addition to this exchange, what does communication do? It also creates and shares meaning. So, there is creation, co creation of meaning. What I said, what you absorb, so there is co creation. That co creation will only happen when there is a to fro discussion, and then there is sharing of meaning. In general, communication is a means of connecting people or places. So, it comes from communis, which means connection, from which also comes the word community. Now, the free dictionary website says the art and technique of using words effectively to impart information and ideas. So, whereas technique is a very technical, scientific, reasoning based, let's say, left brain based word and methodology. Art is more right brained and more innovative and more impromptu. So that means communication is not only a sterile process, but it is very creative in its intrinsic nature. One needs to improvise and innovate on the spur of the moment to make communication effective. And same is true for our classroom communication as well. Just because we are teachers does not mean that we hold the permit to go ahead and speak indiscriminately, continue speaking for long times. We can do that, but will it be effective? That again will depend upon how much engagement and how much feedback we seek from our students and participants. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have shared a little bit about a little bit about communication with you, understanding the process of communication and how we should approach communication altogether. It should be done with everybody. So, my teenage children, one of them is past teenage, is 20, and the other one is 16, almost nearing the end of their teenage. uh, this approach helped me to improve our relationships to a great extent, wherein I was very open and very active to receiving feedback from them. So if you look at the communication model and what I've shared with you, that how the message is passed across, which channel is used, which language is used, how it is encoded, how it is decoded, and what feedback is given, all these aspects of communication are controlled and managed by the listener. So that means to have effective communication, one should listen more rather than speak more. So people who command influence over the others. For example, we had, in prehistoric times, or even in ancient times or medieval times, even in recent modern, pre-modern era, wherein just towards the time when British Raj was getting established in our country, we've had emperors who, in their court, had um, wise men, had an entire council advising them. So these people would speak to the emperor, and the emperor would listen and then come to a decision. So, listening allowed the emperor or the person in authority to gain more power, to feel more empowered, and make better decisions. So, listening is always much more an important skill. Perhaps it is not a higher order skill when it comes to communication, when it comes to a language, but it is definitely the bedrock of good communication. So, out of listening, speaking, reading, writing, we would perhaps associate listening and reading as lower order skills of learning a language, then speaking and writing as higher order skills of acquiring proficiency in a language. But that is for language, not for communication. Communication uses language as a tool to establish connection and connectivity. That is where we forget the actual relationship or actual application of the tool that is being given to us in the form of language. Now, let's examine how classroom communication is different from communication. So, these are a few aspects that I bring out with you. The nature of information is different, because although the students would have paid money to buy a ticket to a rock concert or to watch a movie, but what they are receiving there in a rock concert and in a classroom session, whether it is physical or non-physical, is going to be very different. So the nature of information is different, sometimes unpalatable, sometimes boring, monotonous, technical, dense, difficult to understand. That is why it becomes unengaging, uninteresting for the students, the nature of information. That is why the stakes are higher, or the level of difficulty higher for the speaker or the teacher when imparting this kind of an information, as compared to a rock performer standing on the stage and just strumming his or her guitar and belting out perhaps melodious, unmelodious, or sung out of rhythm songs. But just because the nature of information is different, that is why it makes the task of the teachers all the more difficult. The audience. Now, again, the same metaphor applies. So, here as well. So, even though they would have paid to buy the tickets, the same way they've paid for the fee to be sitting in the classroom, yet the audience is inclined more to the other kind of a communication setup than this. Although that they do not realize that this has much more stakes, education has much more stakes in their life than attending a rock concert or watching a movie or anything else. But they still choose to disregard it. So, what we can do as teachers is, I have found it very helpful because I also engage sessions on resume building and writing. So, usually institutes would send to us students towards the, who are in the penultimate semester, or some students who, out of the 8 semester program, are perhaps in the fifth or sixth semester, who would soon undergo campus placement drive for internship opportunities. So that is not helpful at that stage, because in any case the time is very less for students to build up or incorporate different skills and competencies into their profile and portfolio. But it also means that the other 4 or 5 semesters, they've actually lost time. Those 2.5 years, they've lost time. So how I share or advise my teachers is how to make audience more moldable, malleable, and open to hearing and getting engaged with the process of classroom communication, is by giving them a clear and distinct goal. I have seen students from class 8 onwards preparing to get into a good prestigious institute after class 12. So for 4 years, they have held close to their heart a goal. And it is possible for these students to work towards that goal in a very focused, streamlined manner. So, what is it that we are doing wrong when these students come to polytechnic colleges or institutes of higher learning? We are perhaps failing in providing them with a goal. So, what is the goal that they're looking for? Not just marks or scoring, a high percentage. It is actually getting a job which will provide them with money or salary, which in tail will give them freedom. That is their goal, and the route is through a job. So if the teachers, in addition to sharing technical information or core information about the session, are also able to bring about this learning and insights into the students, that once you gain this knowledge, or once you study this subject, once you study these chapters properly, you will be able to score more, and this in turn is, this score high in this module is preferred by such and such company that comes for campus placement, or even if it does not come for campus placement, your chances of getting a job with them are much higher. So that is how we mold the audience. But this understanding of the audience definitely needs to come to us, that it is not eager and engaged, but it has to be made keen, The nature of the audience can be changed by providing them visible, tangible goals that they actually want. Then the level and degree of participation of the audience varies, wherein, it is a concert is once in a lifetime kind of an opportunity. Attending classes happening for them daily, and they've been doing that since they were 5 years of age, or even younger, 3 years of age, and perhaps will continue for good 13, 14, 15 years of their life. So that is something which is repetitive in nature, so it becomes monotonous, it becomes difficult for them to sit. So having that kind of a sensitivity and sensibility of their situation will help us to understand why the level and degree of participation is vagrant, is high in some children, is not so high in the other children, and how we can have it enhanced and improved. The purpose of classroom communication is different. We should always understand this and bring it out, impress upon it to our students, that if you study, you're going to get a good job. That means freedom. Get a good job, freedom. Get a good job, freedom. Please study for it. So that is the way. If we bring about the purpose to something that they would want to listen to, or that they would relate to, we can make it more purposeful and essential for them. So automatically their engagement will improve. Again, a classroom communication setup is an oblique communication process, very much like the communication process that happens in a movie hall or in a concert, but very different from the communication that happens between in a setting wherein there is conversation between peers or siblings, because both the parties, in case of peers and siblings, are at equal level of authority, and they're speaking from an equal social status. Whereas in a classroom, this balance is tipped in favor of, or tilted in favor of, the teachers, because they are the people who command more respect, power, influence within the setup of the organization, that is the college or the institute. So they are the institute, the structure of the organization gives the teachers more power and authority. Now, the figure of authority can be benign, can be encouraging, but the moment the figure of authority becomes an authoritarian, the communication, the oblique communication process becomes lopsided, and it discontinues, or it stops engaging the students. So a teacher should always be mindful of that. In any case, they are placed higher, so there is a greater distance between them and the students. Our effort should be to bridge this gap by not becoming friends of our students, but becoming friendly with them. So there's a fine line between these two words, but one is a course of action and the other is a role that we will adopt. So instead of becoming a friend, rather than adopting the role, please change your behavior or the way you are going to interact with them and make it friendlier to subside or sorry, to overcome the challenges of the oblique communication process. Then there are other factors. For example, technology nahi hai. So in 2019, Mr. Ranjit Singh, he is a government school teacher in Maharashtra, a high school teacher, and he found that most of his students, girl students especially, because he was teaching in a girls school, were very eager to learn, and they were all in class 8. It was a very important time for girls to start learning, because that is the time where they usually start dropping out of schools because of the changes in their body, the menstrual cycle coming on, and then that means that the girl child will remain uneducated. That means a loss of helping hand, an earning member to those economically weaker sections, and perhaps would even entail or imply that the entire family, the girl, when she grows up, her entire family ends up being uneducated or having very little education. Then again, the employment, everything is going to be very disappointing, if I may say so, for the Indian economy. So he understood the implications of why eighth class girl students should study. And it was during the lockdown, wherein we had not, the first lockdown, wherein we had not yet developed the network of providing the girls with notebooks, with books, essential supplies for continuing their sessions online. Not everybody had access to, technology, even a phone. So what he did was, in his own capacity, he developed or he converted all the books for all the subjects for class 8 Maharashtra government schools, Maharashtra state government schools, into a QR scannable QR code. So any person who would scan the code would immediately be directed towards a link wherein they could download all the textbooks. And that is how they would be able to study without having access to the books. And he was able to carry on uninterrupted, well engaging online sessions. So there are so many other factors that will affect the classroom communication. What is the mental state, the emotional state of the child? How is the teacher feeling? Is the teacher feeling too stressed because of the admin work that is also loaded on? So there was a recent study that in India, the teachers, in fact, not only in India, all over the world, the teachers are burdened with so much of admin work, clerical work, that their core responsibility they are not able to execute and deliver with utmost sincerity and efficiency because they are bogged down. So there are so many other factors that adversely affect this communication process and model. That is why we need to be much more sensitive and much more proactive in approach in engaging this session. That is the classroom, effective classroom communication. So I'm soon going to take a break. But if it is okay with all of you, shall I continue the session or do you want me to introduce an activity now? If there are any doubts or questions till now, please ask me. I'm open to sharing whatever is available with me through my experience and expertise. Since there is no
Please.
response, is
Yes, ma'am.
someone
Please
going to
continue,
speak?
ma'am.
Yes, thank you so much. I will continue the session. So let me break this down into three stages, which I felt were helpful in developing and delivering or having an effective classroom session. Now, the first stage is preparation before the session. What is it that we should be taking care of? Of course, we have our curriculum plan, our lesson plan, the syllabus that has to be covered. And so that should be the length of the syllabus covered, should be something that is very important to be decided before we get into a session. For example, if we have a session of 45 minutes, it is a good idea to restrict the speaking time and sharing of information to between 25 to 30 minutes and not more than that. Because attention span of an individual is of 7 seconds. Beyond that, their thought will go somewhere else and return to what they are doing presently. But if that keeps on happening pretty often or frequently, that they are supposed to pay attention to one kind of information and content, the frequency of going out of connection will be higher, and the time taken to return to the same content and engage with it will go on increasing. So that means the amount of distraction, the number of times the child will get distracted, and for how long the child will get distracted goes on increasing steadily as the length of the session increases. So that means even if the teacher has communicated, put in efforts, laborious efforts in conveying and breaking down a very difficult concept, it may not totally be absorbed and assimilated by the student because they stop paying attention. So you need to restrict your time. It is advisable to have a shorter time in online sessions. Why? Because our eyes, our ears, our bodies are not made to receive information through a very alien, artificial, and a very cold method, if I may say so. That is the screen which emits blue light. It hampers us, it damages our brain. So our brain gets into, or our body gets into the reformative, restorative practices or restorative activities pretty soon as we sit in an online session. And imagine if we're sitting in an online session for hours. The same is the case for teachers also. They are also engaging online sessions. So in any case, the teachers are also feeling a depletion of their energies, and so are the students. And it is more pronounced in their sense, in their case, because they are not participating more to the monotony and boredom of receiving too much of dense content and information continuously from different teachers. So the length of the syllabus to be covered should be sorry, should keep in mind all these aspects and should be as little as possible. And I'll share this in elaboration in tomorrow's session, wherein we can talk about developing sessions and session plans in a very different manner. The teacher should read and make notes so that there is something new and different which can be added every time to the session, even if they are delivering the same aspect or the same syllabus to some different set of students. What it does is it brings about a quality of newness for the teacher also. So the teacher is also more engaged with the content and not just speaking from rote memory. Then the delivery also comes across as impassionate and unengaging. But if there's some hook, line, and sinker that the teacher has introduced into the session for himself and herself, then that aspect of communication is high, the energy rubs off to the students, if not to all, but to many, and that makes the session much more effective. Please bear in mind that not all your students will always be engaged in all your sessions. There are always going to be pockets of students totally disengaged and cut out from what you are saying, whether it is a physical setting or a non physical virtual setting. But we can reduce this number by making or incorporating different aspects. Audiovisual aids to support teaching should always be there, especially in an online medium, because only one person speaking all the time makes it very monotonous for the ears, for the eyes, for the brain. So, introduce a new voice, give yourself a respite, also give your students a breather by introducing some audiovisual aids to support and elaborate the concepts that you are going to share. So, this preparation has to be done beforehand. So, today again, I will be sharing a small video with you, and also tomorrow's session. Infrastructural support is something that you should take care of so that the noise or the lapses in connectivity and connection are taken care of or are reduced to negligible and are reduced to until something goes drastically wrong, it is not going to be hampered. So, one should check the wi-fi, the router, the network, mobile network. The mobile phone should be kept handy, and the mobile network should also be turned on. Even if the system is connected to the wi-fi, ensure that the wi-fi router or the router is connected to a point that is fed by the power that comes through the inverter in case the electricity goes out. The batteries should be on full charge for all the devices. Perhaps have a separate camera and a mic for your sessions if they are online. In case of in-person sessions, if you keep, which classroom it is. If you can change the classroom, do that. So in the Aurobindo schools, and also in Shanti Niketan, also in Montessori schools, and also in so many other schools that are coming up with the methodology or pedagogy of experiential learning, the classroom is redefined by them. So I'll be talking about the flipped classroom tomorrow also, which depends mostly on how this information is shared. But otherwise, the physical classroom can also be under a tree, in the park, in the garden, to provide a different context within which the stimulant is introduced to the students, and their learning or the process undergoes a change. So perhaps you can even think of, rethink, and redesign your sessions by changing the infrastructural support. You should share the details of the session. So that is amazing. So I have engaged sessions in the past with Knitter only through Aman Ma'am's Ages and Support and Innovation, about how to use Twitter handles, LinkedIn community, and blogs to create information, to create sessions and deliver sessions. So again, you can have sorry, your profile and the student's profile on LinkedIn and Twitter, because in addition to getting information from you and other experts, it also helps them to get better job opportunities. We all know it because as professionals, we also ourselves make profiles on these platforms for the same purpose. Make a WhatsApp group and have admins only posting privacy settings. Open the WhatsApp group on certain times for 15-20 minutes, wherein you can manage the chat and not have students spam the group with unwanted chat and interaction. And therein, create a hype, market the sessions. So, what will you learn? Why you should study? So instead of just saying what will you learn, talk about why will you benefit by studying this. This will help you to cover 20% of your upcoming syllabus for your syllabus for your upcoming exams. When you score high in this module, ABC company immediately picks you up for employment and internship in their company or in their setup. The guest estimate quiz or the pre-placement technical round, questionnaire round of such and such company comprises most of the questions from this module, this chapter. So if you want to start working, get to this session tomorrow or day after, and we will learn all this. So this is how you create or establish the why before any purchase is made. So establish the why for your students as well. This will also help you to change your own approach to how to teach. This is a little bit of innovation and little bit of rethinking and redesigning of your session. You're not going to change the syllabus, but sorry, how to share the information in the session differently so that it seems relevant. It is relevant, but it does not seem relevant to the students who lack experience, wisdom, and of course knowledge. So that is why they're learning from you. But if you can just bring it home to them, so that is how you can share the details of the session so that they know how they are, why, and at what time they have to be present. So this aspect is about the content and delivery of it. Then verbal communication skills is also something that we should be preparing for before a session. In fact, this is a continuous process. This preparation of our verbal communication skills is a continuous process. We should work on our voice. So when I said 93% of our communication is non-verbal in nature, that means our voice has comprises 55% of that communication. So, how are the expressions coming out in my voice? Am I speaking in a monotone, without any intonation, without any modulation? Then that means my students are not going to engage. It seems like a recorded message being relayed on the microphone in the classroom or through the online world. Am I loud and confident where it is required? Am I coming across as unengaged, distracted? Is there clarity in what I'm speaking? Am I using too much of technical jargon? Then people will not, or the students will not connect with me. And how am I using pauses? So, pauses are called dramatic pauses that introduce meaning and melodrama in a very sterile communication, like technical education being imparted in a classroom setting. So, we should employ and know when to employ pauses. Pauses can be used 3 times very effectively in a classroom communication. First is when I've shared something of immense importance and I want my students to imbibe it, to internalize it, at least initially, then I give them a pause. Pauses can also be used by teachers, by you, before you introduce something very technical, difficult to understand, and dense information in the classroom. Because immediately everybody is then very alert as to why did our teacher stop speaking? Has he or she dropped out of the network? If you are in the physical classroom, then they start looking at you, trying to gauge what's wrong or what's going on. That is the moment when you have their attention, and then you can share that very important information. Otherwise, pauses can also be used to reprimand or communicate reprimand without communicating your distaste or without actually projecting that the control of the session has gone beyond your faculties and you have to resort to shouting and threatening. Just take a pause and everything will die down and shut down, because nothing can hide behind your voice and your communication, and any disruption or distraction which a juvenile element is trying to create in the classroom will be checked through a pause. It is always helpful. Next thing that I want to talk about preparation before in verbal communication is language. We should keep our language simple. So even when I was studying my master's in 2016 in the UK, so I was studying a creative writing course. So it was the first session of our module of creative writing prose. So our teacher, Dr. Claire Herman, who now teaches in Oxford University. So mind you, Durham University's literature department is the highest ranked department as far as academics go, as far as job opportunities go, level of difficulty go in the world. So it is ranked higher than Oxford's literature department. And we were only 6 people who were selected from across the world for this master's program. So she, so it is not just any professor saying just because she was so good that is why she was poached by Oxford, even while she was teaching us. So that was the first day of a creative writing prose workshop, and she asked that if anyone has any partially ready manuscript for a short story, we'll work on it in the workshop and then we will take things forward. So I happen to have part of my manuscript ready, and I shared it with my students, with my learners. So I think I was 35 or 36 years of age when I went ahead to study. So this was after 18 years of giving up education or taking a break from academic career altogether that I resumed my studies. So everybody was younger to me. Dr. Claire Herman was is the age of my mother, but the course director, Dr. Paul Batchelor, was younger to me by 4 years or so. So so I have shared my manuscript via email with everybody, and we collected in that classroom to discuss my workshop. And therein, I am talking about a scene between the hero and heroine. I'm describing the heroine with a lustrous mane and glassy porcelain skin and whatnot. So she said that, Suditi, you do not need to use these kind of long words, flowery language to convey the romance in the setting and between the characters. So even in creative writing, we avoid complex, flowery, difficult to understand language. Everybody was there, had barring 2 other people. One was a Japanese and the other was a Singaporean Chinese. Everybody had their first language as English, yet they could not relate to the content, or they found it too difficult to accept. So what I'm trying to bring about here is creative writing, which is supposed to be a language heavy subject. Even that subject avoids difficult flowery language. So we should keep the language simple in any case in a technical piece of communication. We should have smaller sentences because it is easier to relate to them. The pauses after sentences, or the pauses at the time of sentence completion, allow us to catch our breath and also give small few seconds of respite to our listener, which helps them to understand and assimilate information better through this very unnatural medium, that is the virtual medium of connection. The same holds true in a physical setting as well, because the nature of the subject is very technical. So we should avoid difficult, long, winding sentences and flowery language, technical jargon, only describing those aspects or only using technical terms for specific processes, products, and other elements of the subject, but otherwise, we should keep it simple and not have our sentences constructed in passive voice, rather active voice, because that allows continuous forward movement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will introduce a short activity for all of you. I will also share this handout or this activity with Aman ma'am, and she can pass it on to you for use later on. As I've stressed earlier, that listening is much more important in a communication process than speaking. So today, here I'm going to share with all of you um, worksheet which has more of a self analysis or self evaluation for you, and then a short quiz at the bottom of it. So if you will be able to see this listening skills worksheet on your screen, it'll be good. Can anybody just unmute and let me know that you can see this worksheet? Is this visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible, ma'am.
Great. So if you'll see that on this worksheet, there are these 10 sentences. So when I came across these listening skill checklist, I found that, I'm committing perhaps 6 to 7 of these sins as far as listening is concerned. Then I gradually started working on them. So I did not attempt correcting all my listening bad habits at one time, but I took up one bad habit at a time, worked at it consciously for 3 weeks, then proceeded to work further once I was sure that okay, this has not stopped being my weakness, and I can gradually build it up to my strength, and let's address another weakness. Okay, so there are conscious things that we can do to check all of these uh, you know 10 bad habits. Once we become aware, then we start working towards avoiding these, and then gradually we become better at them. But the first step of avoiding or overcoming or doing away with these bad habits is awareness, that are we doing it. So when this is a self questionnaire that you can address or administer to yourself after every 6 months, because something which was earlier a strength could, due to neglect and awareness, become a weakness. So that is why it is important to keep revisiting this listening skills or bad habit list worksheet. And once you honestly attempt it, and once you honestly attempt it, you become aware of, oh, this is a blunder that I've been committing as far as listening is concerned. Oh, so I listen when my boss is speaking, but when my children are speaking, I do not listen. Do we actually make eye contact when our family members are speaking, or are we still looking into the newspaper, the mobile phone, or just perhaps just undressing and speaking to them and not making eye contact, actually sitting down, turning our body towards them and listening? So there are so many things that this worksheet will help us to imbibe as far as better listening is concerned. And this is something that I will leave all of you to attempt and work upon on your own. If there's any listening skill bad habit that any one of you feels that you cannot overcome or do away with on your own, please let me know so that I can share the tool or the activity that you can do, that you can perform to start checking and controlling that bad habit. Is there any?
Ma'am, what is I am a compulsive note taker.
Yes. So this is for someone who is usually in a subordinate position, or especially when we are in an interaction model wherein the person addressing us is a figure of authority or superior to us, our boss, our supervisor. So when we are speaking to that person, or that person speaking to us, or even on the phone, or even otherwise, like in a meeting with colleagues, am I always taking notes and not making eye contact with my speaker? Then that means that I am not able to take in the non-verbal cues, the cues from the body language. If someone is speaking to me like this, immediately when I've crossed my arms, perhaps they are not even visible on the camera, but you can see the change in my demeanor and my stance when I'm speaking to you. You start feeling that I'm not trying to connect, that I'm conveying that I'm not interested in what you're saying. But the moment I lean into the camera, you can see that my arms are open, my shoulders are broadly squared, and perhaps my hands are also open palm movements, which are not visible in the camera. But an impression of that openness is conveyed through my non-verbal communication to the camera. That is helpful in better listening. But when I'm taking notes, not making eye contact, hardly showing any kind of non-verbal cues from my end. Have I understood? Am I engaged? Or am I just avoiding eye contact and perhaps just scribbling away something not even related to what the speaker is speaking? Then it hampers listening and communication. Have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Anything else anybody would like to talk about in these 10 listening skills bad habits? All right. So let's begin. Let's move on to the quiz part of it. As you can see, there are 4 boxes in this part of the worksheet, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. What I'll do is I will share instructions to solve the puzzles in all of these 4 boxes only 2 times. I will not request you, or I will not encourage you to ask me or clarify, because I'm not going to do that. Listen to me carefully. I'm going to repeat the instructions once. So 2 times I will be giving out instructions before moving on to the next box. Please solve the puzzles as far as it makes sense to you, or as you feel is the right response. Once everybody's done this, then we will discuss sorry, then we will discuss these answers. All right, has everybody got a pen and paper, or a pencil and a paper with them? Are we good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right, so instructions for box number 1 are: dot the letter in box number 1. Dot the letter in box number 1. बॉक्स नंबर 1 में दिए गए लेटर पर डॉट लगाएं. Instructions for box number 2 are: write down the word Xerox in the blank spaces. In box number 2 there are blank spaces. Write down the word Xerox there. बॉक्स नंबर 2 में दिए गए रिक्त स्थानों में वर्ड Xerox लिखिए. Let's move to box number 3. If MB is Mama Bull, BB is Baby Bull, PB is Papa Bull, please circle the odd one out. MB is Mama Bull, BB is Baby Bull, PB is Papa Bull, circle the odd one out. Mama Bull, Baby Bull, Papa Bull में से जो odd one out है उसके आसपास घेरा लगाएं. Box number 4. Write down 2 words with the letters given in the box. Write 2 words with the letters given in box number 4. Box number 4 में दिए गए letters से 2 words लिखिए. Once you've done this, please let me know so that I can interact and share the answers, know your answers, and then share the answers with you. Who's ready to share the answer for box number 1? If you'd like to show how you have put a dot on the letter into the camera, it will be nice. Yes, sir. So you put the dot. Oh, besides the letter, just like the dot has been put besides the digit 1, right? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garg. Thank you, Dr. Garg, for sharing the answer. Anybody else? Dr. Aruna, Dr. Jatinder, Dr. Rohit? Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Garg, for sharing that. The answer to this question is anyway correct. So, जैसे Dr. Garg ने answer किया है, the way Dr. Garg has answered the question is correct. It can be put at the bottom of the letter I. If we put it on top, the letter would have become small I. If I had put it at the bottom, it would have become an exclamation sign. There are people who have put it on the body of the letter. So, what it means is all the responses are correct because I've said that dot the letter I. I did not say dot on the body of the letter, do not dot on the body of the letter. So, when I curtail feedback and my instructions are not comprehensive and complete, the response that comes is correct. So, the first lesson of listening skills is that before we assume that the other person is wrong and deliberately not trying to understand us because we find a different response as expected to our communication, we must first look at and examine our own communication and instruction. Was it complete? Was it comprehensive? Was it clear? So there are 7 C's of communication. So did it cover 4 to 5 C's of communication? Then perhaps the person does not want to engage. Otherwise, that response is correct. Now, can I request any of the other participants to share their response to box number 2? How did you write the word Xerox? Did anybody leave a blank space in the beginning, a dash in the beginning to write Xerox on the remaining 5 dashes? Because Xerox has 5 letters, Xerox, 5 letters. And the dashes here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So did anyone leave a dash in the beginning or a dash at the end? Okay. So let me share with you that usually participants leave a dash in the end because they begin to write from the beginning and put the first X here, then Erox, and the last dash remains empty. Or otherwise, they leave a dash in the beginning. Or sometimes they add an extra X towards the end to fill up all the dashes. Sorry, but all these responses are incorrect. Why? Because dashes are not blank spaces, but our conditioning has told us, because we've since childhood we've seen that whenever we want to specify a blank space, we either put a long dash or series of dashes, or even in forms these days we put dashes to signify this is a blank space. But if we understand blank space verbatim the way it is, so it is the spaces between the dashes which is actually blank. And if you count these spaces, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in number. And within these dashes, the word Xerox can exactly fit. So, another lesson of listening skills is before you listen to someone, please do away with your past conditioning, past experiences, and listen to that person, listen to that concept afresh. Do not let the baggage of your past cloud your judgment and engagement in the communication process. Any of you would like to share the answers to box number 3? Which is the odd one out here, please? Okay, let me ask who has said that Papa Bull is odd one out? Okay, how many of you said that Baby Bull is odd man out? Anybody? No? What about Mama Bull? Who has circled Mama Bull as odd one out? It was not such a difficult puzzle, but let me share with you that Mama Bull is the answer. Why? Because bull is not a species, rather, it is a gender. So perhaps when I said, bull, you were all encouraged or motivated to believe that I am talking about a species of animal, and you even gave in to the paradox of mama bull because thinking that bull is a species. But in reality, bull cannot be mama, cannot be of the female gender, because bull is of the masculine gender. So, the lesson of listening skill in this box or in this puzzle is that even if you're listening to someone who supposedly plays as a figure of authority in a more experienced position than us, then one should still listen with a lot of objectivity and applying one's own common sense and experience and wisdom to it. Because everybody can be wrong. Anybody can be wrong. And we should not forget, or we should not dismiss our own gut feelings and our own learnings and information and knowledge just because someone happens to be more experienced or is placed in a position of authority. Let's come to box number 4. What are the words that you formed with box number 4, please? Anybody would like to share the two words? I guess nobody's written any words, but people do come up with words like door, doors, to, and so on. But if you look at it, these letters exactly make the word TWO2 and then words WORDS. So when I said two words, even in Hindi, when I repeated, I said two words to be written with these letters, it meant the words two words and nothing else. So the lesson of listening skill that is embedded in this puzzle is before we complicate understanding of a communication, of a piece of communication, we should first always keep it simple, and then if we cannot reach a conclusive answer, then we can perhaps complicate it by applying other permutation, combination, and other meanings and other schemes of understanding. I had participation from one of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gar, for participating. I hope the others will warm up to the session and participate more in the upcoming activity. If time permits me, then I'm going to undertake that activity. All right, so let's resume the session or the presentation from where we had left. Is my PPT visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. All right. So next is when we are communicating during the session, what are the things that we can do or what are the activities that we can perform to communicate better during the session? The first is we should use words that influence and motivate others, our students, our listeners, especially to engage more. And these are positive words. And for example, here I have said use of if and when. So we, instead of using if you understand this concept, you are going to score high. I can say when you understand this concept, your scoring in this part of the syllabus is going to be very high. So when I use positive reinforcements, positive communication, positive words, and positive non-verbal communication with my students, their motivation and encouragement is high. I can encourage them, steer them gently through constant mental suggestion, through constant verbal and non-verbal suggestion, that it is possible for them to grasp this subject and to score high in it. This is a subject that is going to help them in fulfilling their ultimate goal, that is of scoring good and getting a good job. One, a teacher can also create a sense of curiosity and a sense of eagerness and excitement by projecting expected results, which I've been talking about since the beginning of the session. For example, one can say that 20% of your final question paper is going to comprise of as concepts covered in this module. So pay attention to score better. So that is how expected results, providing a glimpse of them will encourage the students to engage more and study better. And this is something that should be done in a non-verbal, in a non-physical setting, especially. So when your WhatsApp message goes out to them announcing a session, or you share about the upcoming session, please develop this. Bring out this aspect of expected results and plant this thought in the minds of the students so that they do not miss the session. Sometimes the students say that we did not know that was such an important one. पता ही नहीं चला इतनी important class miss हो गई. So to counter that, sometimes it could be a genuine lack of understanding and information. So pass on that information about that session being very high in importance and significance. Then there is negative construction for curiosity. So you can say that I can understand it's the last session of the day and your interest would be very low. And I do not know how much of this concept you will understand, but if you are able to understand it well, your project or your lab work will come out extremely well. So you'll end up scoring 80% or more in your viva, in your practical, but I do not know how much you'll understand now. So that is something wherein you are negatively projecting that the students are not going to be interested, and there's going to be a lack of engagement from there. So that piques their curiosity that, oh, that is the case. So that is how, situation is already set up in our disfavor. So why not, curtail it, curb it, and engage with what our teacher is saying. The last thing that you can do is through language, influencing through languages using yes tags. Isn't it? And wasn't it? Will it not be so? Will you not make best efforts to complete your files on time? So that is something that is positive reinforcement and encourages the students to be on time. It is very difficult to say no to isn't it. है ना को ना कहना बहुत मुश्किल है. Most of the times teachers feel that they should comment or highlight or magnify the negative aspects or the negative tendencies in the students. But that is, if we choose to magnify them, they will be magnified, they will grow as teachers, as the wiser ones, as the more benign and forgiving ones in the entire communication model. If we magnify their positives, their strengths rather than their weaknesses, we will definitely garner such a response from them. Other important aspects that a teacher should work upon while delivering the session is to include anecdotes and examples, to have as many stories, as many examples, real life, relatable instances, so that the students can understand the significance and also the concept properly. In this in this aspect, flipped classrooms are of a big help, which I shall talk about tomorrow. Difficult points should be handled in a manner wherein the entire solution should not be given to them again. Rather, the teacher should make an effort to understand from when or with what information or till when the concept was understood by the student. So breaking down the doubt into different steps. So, did you get it till here? Did you understand this much? Did you understand? Oh, so the remaining part you did not understand. Sometimes, when we break down the doubt into smaller parts, the teacher comes to know that there was some part in the middle which was not understood, because of which the entire or the remaining concept was not understood. If instead of explaining the entire concept again, which can become boring, mundane, and will not have perhaps help in solving that doubt, if the teacher can just identify which part of the concept was not clear, just solve that bit much, that smaller part, the entire concept can become clearer. And once you are breaking down with one student who has shown the gumption to participate, to engage and voice a doubt, you are also helping other students who are mute and not participating to understand the concept better. One should always avoid arguments because the students are speaking due to the lack of experience, knowledge, patience, and other virtues in them. And the teachers do not have this lack. They are fulfilled with experience, knowledge, expertise, patience, and other virtues. So please do not pull yourself down. Please do not reduce yourself to their level and come into arguments. Tell them that this is not the platform for engaging into arguments. You can encourage the students to communicate their doubts by writing it down, especially in an online classroom setting. When you open the WhatsApp group chat settings to be wherein posts can be made and shared by all the members of the group, to remind them that they can post their doubt there in the written, and that would help you to understand it better. If someone is purposefully trying to create disruption in the classroom without having any genuine doubts or difficulty, be prompt in escorting that element outside the class. Relieve everybody and yourself of this distraction and let this person go. This act itself of not engaging and letting them go will perhaps, help them understand, or make that student aware of his or her own insolent and unwanted behavior, and may in some way, encourage him or her to avoid it in future. Never ever pull down students even if they cannot understand. They are different kind of learners with different intelligence levels of intelligence and IQ. So never ever do that, because when you pull down one student, the others who are able to understand, they also get demotivated. And these students who are not able to keep up with the others and cannot understand these difficult concepts tend to drop out of sessions and tend to not engage and make the classroom communication not that effective. Again, as teachers, you can practice effective listening. So have pockets wherein feedback is incorporated into an ongoing session. So within a 45-minute session, when you are going to speak for 25 minutes, after every 10-12 minutes, or after every 10 minutes, you can have a small gap of 1, 2, or 5 minutes, inviting others to participate, share their doubts, share what their understanding is, have a revision by encouraging them to repeat what you've shared with them, so that you know that they have actually understood and absorbed the concept. This is another activity that I was planning to do, but since the participation is dismal and we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip this activity. I'll very quickly come to the non-verbal aspect of communication, even if we are teaching in an online platform, and especially when we are present in a physical classroom, we should dress according to the role that we are enacting and the role that we are fulfilling in that teacher's capacity. So one should dress so that it conveys our seriousness, our attitude, and approach to the role that has been assigned to us, and that is to teach and to impart education. If our dressing up in any which way communicates that we have not made the effort to dress up properly, then that means it implies for the person who's looking at you, who's going to listen to you, that you have not made the effort to even develop the piece of information or develop the session which is to be imparted. So there's a lot of undercurrents of associating, cross association of information and messages between our non-verbal communication and our verbal communication. Eye contact is very important. So even while I'm speaking with all of you, I cannot see all of you. Even if I had these slides turned down, I cannot see because the videos are turned off, except for I think one of the participants have their videos on. But from my end, the eye contact should be continuous and should be encouraging. That is why I'm looking into the camera of the laptop and communicating with you, communicating with the camera, assuming that all of you are sitting behind this tiny blue dot and I'm actually making eye contact with you. This helps in enhancing the quotient of non-verbal communication and the engagement and effectiveness of the classroom setting, especially in the non-physical world. Polite smile is something that we should always bear, because once we smile, the jowl, the muscles in our jaw relax. The moment these muscles relax, the blood flow to our ears, our temples, and then to our brain increases. But if we have clenched or a scowling face or furrows on our forehead, then we are restricting the blood flow to our brain, which diminishes our qualities of quick thinking, promptness, alertness, and speech in any setting. So, polite smile is more for us to keep ourselves calm and composed, and also it has a very benefic effect on our recipients. One should use movement. So even while I'm sitting here, I am using my arms, I'm using my face, my voice, leaning into the camera, moving back from it. My hands are visible. I have incorporated movement by change of slides. I have incorporated movements by change of aids. So there's some activity, some video, something or the other that is happening. So that's allowing movement also happening in this non-physical space of the classroom. So in a physical space of a classroom, one should not just stand right next to the blackboard or prop themselves on top of the teacher's desk and discourse and deliver the entire discourse. One should move across the breadth and, if possible, in the aisles across the length of the classroom so as to have interaction and observation of all the students present in that physical classroom and have a better connectivity with all of them and also keep them alert and aware. One should be able to project excitement and energy. If I'm coming here, Albert Dragger, lack of energy and motivation. Oh, let's get over with this. How much time is left? Let's just finish this. And that is not how you are going to feel engaged and excited about what I have to convey. So, being the person who's speaking more and first, the onus is on me to project excitement and energy so that I can infuse it on those in those who are receiving my communication. I should place my body in a manner that all my non-gestural cues, which are very positive in nature, are observed and absorbed by my recipients. So, which makes more sense in a non-physical setup because instead of my the entire body, the portion that is available for non-verbal communication is from my head till perhaps my shoulders and not beyond that. So sometimes even the hands do not come within the range of the camera. So that means I should place my body well. My shoulders should be squared out. I should look directly into the camera. I should be propped on a seat that is not revolving or shaking. And I shouldn't be looking away, but very much engaged. The same is true when I am using my classroom, physical classroom for communication. I should never have my back for long periods of time from towards my students. Last rows and corners should be given observation and attention by the teacher in a physical setup. One should use the rostrum, the laptop, the table, all these pieces of furniture and devices as an extension of one's physical body and not lean upon the table on which I'm sitting to deliver the session. Do you see immediately there's lack of engagement and I show a casual attitude, perhaps I'm too tired when I'm doing this. So that is something that I should be more careful about, even in the physical and non-physical setup. I should check my unwanted non-verbal cues or gesticulations, flaring of arm, these kind of things and sounds that I make. I should stop doing it. Curling up my nose. This is not something good. I should avoid staring at a student or staring into the screen. I should have a polite smile and it reflects in the softness in my eyes and my gaze. I should avoid looking out of the camera too often. I do that to think. But otherwise, just looking at the ceiling just because no one is there, I'm looking at the ceiling and delivering the entire session, trying to remember, recollect my thoughts. No, that is not going to help. Even in a physical setup, deadpan and artificial look without any expressions and speaking is not going to help. It is not going to engage, especially in an online setup. I'm going to skip this activity as well because there's lack of participation and also lack of participants. And I'll very quickly like to wind up the session because I think, yes, I have exceeded 1 minute more. Allow me 4 minutes, and by 1:05, I'm going to finish the session. So use of aids and media. Writing board should be used in a manner. Here also in Google Meet also you can start or you can initiate a writing board which is shared by everybody. But in that writing board, everybody can write, and there are settings which in advanced settings in which you can permit who will write and who will not write. Otherwise, you can start using or sharing. Sorry, start sharing a Word document which is plain, and you can type in it. You can make 3 columns ideally, which is the same thing that you can do in a writing board in a classroom. And when you open something for discussion and questions, what do you think about this? Tell me where would we use this and this. So you can have the ideas and the options and the points shared by the students on the rightmost column, and you can write within that column 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the suggestions or whatever the inputs that come from the students. Then you begin writing or sharing the actual information from the leftmost column of your writing board or the writing document or the whiteboard in the software application. So when you start writing here, some points from that rightmost or extreme right column will be incorporated because they were the right answers. So you can strike them out. You can put a tick across them and include them in the main answer. Once you fill up the extreme left column, you move to the center column. What will happen is there are certain fast learners and some are slow learners. When you are dividing your writing space into two such columns, then you do not have to move the physical distance in writing the in the classroom in the writing board, and even in the online you don't have to keep on typing where the students are trying to follow a line which is so long, and it is hampering understanding because it is very difficult to follow a long string. But something within short columns is easily understood because they can move easily from one line to the next line to the next line in a shorter space. So that is helping all kinds of learners, fast, medium pace, and slow learners. And eventually, when you filled up the middle section column also of your writing board in the virtual class or in the physical class, erase the points of the right hand corner and complete. So this is how you will keep everybody, every kind of learner engaged through adequate and judicious use of your writing board or whiteboard. The number of presentations should be limited in number. There shouldn't be too much of text written because if you are going to read out and provide everything on the slides, then the students can read themselves. They do not need a translator or an interpreter or a reader to read out the information from the slides. Rather, the slide presentations should have salient points only, so that they are cues to the deliverer, to the source, as to what information has to be shared when. The sequencing of the session is achieved through slide presentations, not sharing of information. One can incorporate many activities, many audio visual aids in the slide presentation only, and this should also be planned before the session is delivered. You should have restricted use of colors because then it becomes too jarring and distracting. Images and figures should also be included, but not too many, so that the students are not distracted from what you're saying and examining the figures and images on the slide. If the slide presentation is shown in a physical setup wherein there is a huge projector screen, then you should use the pointer to point out important aspects. Here, I can just use my cursor to move and bring attention to certain aspects of the text on the slide presentation. Voices and videos and animations should be included because they help in explaining certain dynamic processes, how the windmill works, okay, and how drilling is actually done, excavation is done. So these are, developed and elucidated better through videos and animation. A sense of scale is also achieved through this. What should be the height of a windmill and how it looks and how it is made, constructed, why aren't there so many, why is this, the wind speed should be this much and all that. So all these kind of aspects, in some cases, become clearer through videos and animation. Then audio clips should also be incorporated wherever they can. You can go to YouTube. There are so many people sharing good information, experts sharing good information free of cost on YouTube, in a bid to have more followers because they want to be influential in the virtual world as well, and they're putting out good quality content. Universities are sharing free good quality content like MIT, Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard on their websites, on their YouTube channels, on their official handles on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can use that and show that during the session to elucidate further, or perhaps an experiment which now cannot be performed because not everybody is meeting in the physical world in the lab to perform these experiments. So video of the experiment can be shown, which has been recorded and posted online. This also helps you to introduce a new voice and break monotony. Sometimes there's illustration of sound is required. Artifacts in a physical classroom help to bring in real elements. So I remember I attended an FTP in which a geologist was attending the FTP with us, and she wanted to talk about her field, and she got actual small rocks which had ore, iron ore. She got one another type of rock to talk about how fossils are formed, how metamorphosed rocks are formed, so on and so forth. So that helped in reinforcing and solidifying the learning more for us, someone who was not from that field altogether. Handouts should be shared because they help in retaining and revising the information. In some cases, they can be shared before, in some cases, they can be shared after. Further reading should be there. Detailed information and images can be included in these handouts. Students can be engaged more. In addition to the textbooks, can be engaged in these handouts. The handouts can be copied articles and blog posts from experts in the field, from their postings, free postings online, free content that they've shared online, Twitter, their blogs, their LinkedIn. And you can ascribe the give the credit to these people, their LinkedIn profiles and other online presence, and share that information in a handout. And of course, you should check all your gadgets and everything during the session as well, and so that you keep making sense, and you have the connection live. So, for example, whenever I flit between an activity sheet and the PPT, I always confirm whether the PPT is visible or not. So that is something wherein you can, encourage feedback also, if not on the content, on the session. And very important to encourage feedback, seek feedback, because it helps you to know whether you have delivered the content adequately in the manner and form absorbed efficiently by your recipients. Were you speaking too fast? Were your language too difficult? Was your language too difficult to understand? And when you are in a physical setup, please keep watch out for the non-verbal feedback that you're receiving in the form of eye contact, nodding, gestures, whether people are yawning, blinking, looking into, staring into disinterestedly into their books, notebooks. So this is something that live feedback is something that you should take care of, which is not available in the online world. Perhaps if directly not asking them, indirectly encouraging them to participate, turn on their cameras, then you can see how they are sitting, where they're sitting, how are they engaged with your session and all. Encourage questions from the students. And if you want, you can allocate some time towards the end of the session where you say that I'll take up all the questions then, without disrupting the flow of the session and not the session plan that you have. Pose questions to them to test their knowledge and understanding time and again. And if you can also elicit written feedback through, of course, assignments on the content, but also feedback on your delivery. And this feedback can be anonymous. You should allocate separate time for question and answers, like I said, in the WhatsApp group. In the session also, you can ask them to put up their queries in the chat, halt or complete the session, the delivery, and then seek what is it that they'd like to talk about. Ask them about it. And you should revisit, like breaking down the concept and revisiting it rather than explaining it in entirety altogether. Sometimes you might have to rephrase and not repeat the entire content that you've shared with them. Do not encourage queries outside the classroom or the time allocated by you specifically for queries, because then otherwise it will mean that you're available to or to these students constantly. You are at the constant beck and call. This will not allow you time for preparation for other sessions, time for relaxation, respite, and more so in an online world wherein boundaries and time zones have suddenly dissipated. You should be very strict in maintaining the discipline and decorum of interaction, even about queries. It is important to understand, but not at all times. And that was all that I wanted to share with you today about effective classroom communication.